Parking fees. All right. So, a little bit of history. Trying to figure out how far back to go on this one. During conversations last year, we got a question from Mr. Balin and others about, it was last year, about whether or not the fee was too high. We asked the town manager to look at whether or not the composition of the fee should be, and he provided a form. There was, Mr. Balin and others took a 10-voter article to the town meeting. Town meeting approved a resolution. I forget the exact language of it, but it was essentially in favor of lower fees. And and I agreed both before that and at the town meeting to make sure that we would talk about this at a future selectmen's meeting, which is what brings us here. So I think that the appropriate thing probably is for the town manager to talk a little bit about the document that he has on what the pricing suggestion is. Diane, then I'm going to ask you to talk about what the parking subcommittee said, and then let's have a discussion, I think. All right, Adam.
So going back to the memo that had been provided to the board during the town meeting discussion, I looked at two issues: the cost of the first issuance of this overnight parking permit, as well as every subsequent reissuance after that first year. And the major difference being in that first year, there's a somewhat great deal of inspection work that needs to be done by the police department, fire department, and then permit issuance by the Board of Selectmen or in the Treasurer's office. All of that doesn't have to happen in each subsequent year in terms of the cost of producing the permit. So looking at the hourly rate and the time spent by those departments for year one, as well as a figure that I used for both that first year's issuance and every other year's reissuance, something I called allocation of a scarce resource. The first year came to $186, and every other year came to $50 or $51. So to talk a little bit about the allocation of the scarce resource, the point I was trying to hit on there is that those folks who receive this permit are receiving a special benefit that very few people in this town receive because of the overnight parking ban. So though there isn't necessarily a cost of producing that, there is certainly some value or incentive being given, or not incentive, benefit being given to those people who are awarded this permit. That's why I included that for the board's discussion. This was again discussed. This was again discussed at last week's parking subcommittee. So at that point, I turn it over to Ms. Mahan if she wants to address the committee's decision.
Okay. We did discuss this issue, and we discussed it from keeping it the same to making it uniform to what we charge the town lots. Charge the public streets the same as we do the public lots, $1 a day, $365 a year, as well as what was presented from the town manager. And the parking subcommittee all recommended that in light of the recent vote by the citizens on the overnight parking ban, in light of the fact we're talking approximately 75 residents out of the 22,000 or so that have this benefit, and the fact that we're an overnight parking ban town, we want to maintain it at the current rate of $200 a year, as well as we have not heard, with the exception of some residents on one street, from any of the other residents who seek this relief to us every year, haven't heard any requests that the fees exorbitant should go up or should go down. And it was felt by the subcommittee to recommend keeping it at $200 for each year, because it keeps on the table the fact that we're trying to really, in somewhat effect, deter overnight parking, because we do have an overnight parking ban. And the $200, we looked at other cities and towns who do comparable, who have overnight parking bans. They also do the same thing. And it was also pointed out that, and this is for the current Board of Selectmen to ponder, that originally the Board of Selectmen had very strict guidelines in terms of you had to be a true hardship case. You had to be Highland Ave, Park Ave. You cannot build any. When people would come in East Arlington on Egerton Road, on Fairmont Street, and say, I have parking for 3, but now I need 4 cars, 2 per, they were told no. And we seem to be getting into the slope of, you know, I rented this place and the landlord won't let me, or now I have 5 cars, that it might give this board some relief if we got back to it truly is a hardship case in the future. But it's up to a majority of the Board of Selectmen, but the Parking Subcommittee recommends that we not make everything uniform, but that we keep it at the $200 a year. I'd make that motion.
All right. So motion from Mrs. Mahan. I have comments, but I tend to, as chair, I try to sit on myself and make myself go top last. So I confess I'm itching to speak, and if you guys want to go, and otherwise I'm going to let myself. Joe.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't second the motion. I like the analysis that the manager's given us as far as it goes. I think it is reasonable to take a look at the allocated costs and establish a yearly permit fee, and then, I mean, probably what we should be looking at is breaking this out. There's an application fee, and we have to determine the first year application portion, and then there's a recurring permit fee year over year. It's the same thing as what we've got here, if you hear me out. But one thing that I think it does still, I understand the concept of the allocation of scarce resource. I'm still not clear how we're backing into that number. What I think I'd feel more comfortable with is if we were including in here an analysis similar to what's done for the police, fire. Oh, no, there is an analysis here for the Board of Selectmen the first year, but there isn't for the subsequent years. I guess in subsequent years, what some of the additional clerical cost is for reissuing the permits. But that's about as far as I've looked at it. I'm just not clear how we get to that $30 on allocation of scarce resource.
There is no grand formula behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve?
Before I make any sort of motion, I'm just to hear out the discussion.
Yeah.
I would not be against having the police department, whether it be Officer Rateau or someone that he works closely with on these issues, go and re-examine the parking spots to see if there are any changes. You know, with different curb cuts can occur, different, signs can be moved.
So you're talking about like renewal?
Yeah, a renewal.
Yeah.
So, a more in-depth examination upon the renewal of a license, and in which case I would support staying at the current 200. If that is not going to occur and we are just going to renew it, I think that maybe going from 200 down to 100 and including more a board of, as Mr. Kira said, a Board of Selectmen analysis on the recurring years, and then examining that and then making a decision. But so that's kind of what I'm thinking.
So my thought is that I'm not fretting the exact number on either the things, but I do support something that I think Joe said, but I would phrase it as there's a first year fee and there's a subsequent year fee, and the first year being higher and the subsequent being lower. Mm-hmm. So, and I would support 200, 100. I would support other numbers, but I do support. I respectfully disagree with the parking subcommittee, which does good work, and I hate disagreeing with them, and I feel like I've disagreed 2 out of the last 3 times. And
Just about every, yeah.
And
At some point, we should evaluate whether we want a parking subcommittee.
Yeah.
Honestly, because there's a lot of time, including
Yeah.
Officer Rateau, that we
Yeah.
spend on these issues, and it kind of seems like, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to make tough decisions,
I
or
agree, yeah.
let's not have a parking subcommittee.
Okay.
honestly.
Yeah. I,
Because it's a waste of, colossal waste of their time.
yeah, I like to think that it's an unusual batting streak that I've got going right now, but I'm definitely aware that I've got that batting streak right now. But it doesn't change my opinion.
No, I would just say if you're putting a group of people together, and maybe I'm the wrong person, take me off, but, if you're putting people together for their expertise and their recommendations are consistently ignored, whether because it's uncomfortable or whatever, I mean, it's not that we just sat down and, this was a lot of, several over the course of a year and a half that we had these meetings, and we were told, please go back to the drawing board, please look at this again.
On this fee amount? This parking subcommittee came back multiple times?
How many times have we discussed the overnight parking fee at our meetings? Two,
For this year,
yeah, for this year only.
we've probably had maybe 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm not counting last year. This originally started out last year.
Before when we did the analysis so that
Yeah.
Swan Street and Forest Street could get the parking there. And since we've had it, the only thing that we've met on, did we have one meeting regarding Swan Street this overnight with the Warren article
Yeah.
that Mr. Dallin submitted?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Okay,
just saying,
right, yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, but,
Okay.
whatever the majority of the board comes up with, but,
Okay.
and I think it's a good idea, honestly, what Mr. Byrne brought up is, again, it would be an additional cost, but if the fee stayed 200 per year, having Officer Rateau go out and look at, the 72 to 75 that we have, and see if there can be a curb cut, so that we can get back to the original spirit. And again, it was, and I don't mean to be chastising, but getting away from the original reason for granting overnight parking permits. You could not blast into Highland Ave or Paul Revere, and you didn't have a place where the town would grant you a curb cut. We could. I think that's a very good suggestion, because I know, and that's the other thing. We've been out, I can't tell you how many times, to just about all 75, between last year and this year.
I
Really.
definitely appreciate that the reasons we're giving permits is different than what was originally done. And I think that so long as we're talking, like if we're doing that on purpose, it's a healthy thing. If we're doing it by mistake, it's a bad thing. But the fact that we're actually, the fact that our policies are evolving over time, in and of itself, that doesn't scare me. We just have to be doing it for the right reason.
No, I just want to respect the overnight parking ban, which is what this town has voted in. That's
Okay.
the point.
That-
I mean,
yeah,
you know
okay,
what I mean?
but that-
What we're doing is not respecting,
Okay,
so.
well, okay. I would quibble with the choice of words there.
Okay,
but
it does
yeah.
have to be respecting. The town has consistently in town meeting voted that they want to keep
Yes.
and maintain the overnight parking ban. And your
Yes.
parking subcommittee is saying in order to do that,
We need exceptions.
well, we need to be firm on exceptions and recommending 200 per year.
Mr. Vallon, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I think you all know my opinion on this because I've been before you several times as well as at town meeting.
So you recommend $186.29 and 51.71?
No, I don't
He
actually.
wants 25.
I will get into that. What I recommended at town meeting, which town meeting did pass as a resolution by a majority of the members, was $150 for the first year and $25 for each subsequent year. The basis for that was very simple. Mr. Chapdelaine did a very honest assessment of the actual costs. And as I said many times to you before, there's a very clear Supreme Judicial Court opinion. I don't know why you're not concerned about it. It's very clear. Permit fees have to be tied to actual costs. You can't make up numbers that you feel are numbers you would like fees to be. They are based on costs. You have on a piece of paper now a very honest assessment of what the costs are. The only thing I quibble with Mr. Chapdelaine's assessment is the $30 allocation of scarce resource, because I think, as he acknowledges, and I give him credit for trying, he acknowledges it is a number he made up to try to sort of